Republican state lawmaker Cheryl Acton wants to make most abortions after 15 weeks illegal in Utah. If passed during this legislative session, abortions past 15 weeks would only be allowed if necessary to prevent death or substantial or irreversible impairment of the woman. Democratic Representative Angela Romero speaking out, saying the issue is a federal issue and the states should leave it alone. We're joined now by both Representative Acton and Romero here in the studio to talk about this. Appreciate having both of you here. Thanks so much for being here. Okay, so a week from today, the session's going to get underway. This one of the bills getting a lot of attention. Representative Acton, let's start with you. What's the impetus for this bill? How did it come about?
As a legislator, we're approached by a lot of people, constituents, organizations, and I was approached by Pro-Life Utah and the Eagle Forum to consider running this bill, the 15 weeks abortion bill. Currently in Utah, a woman can have an abortion up to 20 weeks electively, actually 22 weeks electively for any reason. This bill simply, the only thing it does is move that back to 15 weeks.
If that did happen, it would be one of the more strict laws in the country. I believe one other state has 12 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. That would be Mississippi, I believe. Angela, you have spoken out about this. You say it's unconstitutional. Why?
Well, it's been struck down in 2 states, and we've had this conversation in 2 other states in 2014 where the federal court struck it down as well. So for me, we should just stick with Roe versus Wade. I mean, I understand people are very passionate about this issue, but I think it'll have some constitutional factors in there, and I'd rather spend our resources and our time and energy on other issues such as comprehensive sex education and health care for marginalized communities.
Okay, I want to dig more into that in a little bit, like the potential consequences that you see coming down the road. But first, Representative Acton, let's bring you back in. Your response to the constitutionality of this, because it's not only coming from lawmakers, but policy advocates and others in the community as well, saying the same thing.
Well, all laws are settled until they're not anymore. And as a lawmaker or as legislators, all laws are subject to change, judicial laws as well, those that come down through the courts. So that is true, but also to clarify the situation, a lot of exceptions do apply to this bill: rape and incest, fatal fetal defects, and so forth. So it's actually different from all of the other state laws, and it is true that other states have been trying to pass similar legislation, but ours is different.
Respond to that.
My concerns are just because we have these exceptions. Maybe somebody who's been a victim of sexual assault or domestic violence doesn't report this to law enforcement or to an advocacy group. And for me, this is really a decision that a woman makes for herself. And we've already regulated women's bodies in multiple ways here in the state of Utah, and so I really feel like we've already went as far as we can go, so why keep on going down that road?
Address that. Why state law now? Why is that not enough?
Because currently, well, Roe v. Wade passed 46 years ago tomorrow, and at that time we didn't know all of the implications that there would be for women physically, psychologically, emotionally, and in terms of future fertility. We also didn't understand fetal pain perception. We didn't contemplate the method that is used in a second trimester abortion. Most abortions in Utah and throughout the country happen in the first trimester, and those would still be legal for any reason, any elective reason. But in the second trimester, it's an entirely different thing. The method used shocks the conscience, and it really has no place.
Do you have any response to that before I get on to the next question?
My response is I just think we should be focusing somewhere else.
Okay, I want to dig into something you brought up a little deeper, and that being you see this being challenged. How so, specifically?
I mean, we've seen it challenged in other spaces in other states, and my concern is why aren't we talking about better ways for people to protect themselves? Why aren't we talking about healthy relationships? I think that's a better use of our time and resources as a legislature. We've seen abortions go down. I don't think anybody wakes up one morning and says, I want to have an abortion. There's circumstances there, and that's a personal decision for someone. So I really feel strongly about that.
Let's bring you in and address that, because if this does pass and it just faces one challenge after another, is that the best use of time for the Utah legislature?
Well, the legislature really will be done with it after we pass it, but the AG's office will be charged with defending it. And what would happen is potentially there could be a challenge, and each time it is challenged, they would need to file a motion or, respond to the challenge, and that's where the time is taken. But it really doesn't necessarily need to may not even happen. And if there is a cost involved, it would be because we lost the challenge.
Let's talk about the likelihood of this passing the legislature. As I mentioned, it kicks off 1 week from today. Last year, we saw a fairly controversial bill in the Down syndrome abortion bill. Do you believe you have the votes to get this through the House and the Senate?
I have not even talked with very many of my colleagues. I don't know, but I certainly hope so.
Okay, your thoughts?
I just really hope it stays in rules, because I think there are a lot of things we need to be talking about, like citizen initiatives when it comes to Medicaid expansion and redistricting, and really looking at healthy relationships, and that's talking about sexual violence and domestic violence and funding programs to do preventative work.
All right. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate both of your points of view on the show for our viewers today, and we will be tracking this as we go through the legislative session. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.